All right. Okay, so fingers crossed that my computer is going to mind its business during the next half hour to 40 minutes and not just die on me like it did a little while ago. I am not a fan of computers. All right, so Brandy, if you'll give me, share screen, I think we're okay to do that. Oh, I need you to enable the share screen. Excellent. I'll minimize this and we're going to come up here and go to this. All right, tonight, I really didn't know the best order to put everything in for everything that I want to cover in regards to exhibition poultry. So some things, for those of you who are most interested in showmanship, youth showmanship, these are things that you will need to know for that. And for those of you who are interested in actually exhibiting your birds as well as showmanship, these are things that you'll need to know for that. So tonight we're going to discuss a little bit about disqualifications and defects in chickens. We're not going to cover everything because I could take 3 hours discussing everything that could possibly be a defect or a disqualification in your poultry, in your chickens. So we're just going to kind of cover the basics tonight, and maybe we'll cover a little bit more specifically in certain breeds in a future meeting. So to start with, we have, these are different kinds of combs in roosters. We have this is whenever somebody mentions a comb on a rooster, this is the kind they think of the most, and this is called a single comb. Most breeds need to have 5 points on that comb. So we start with this one right here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and this is called the blade back here. 90% of the single comb breeds, they need to have 5 points on the comb. That is a breed characteristic. If they have 4, a judge isn't going to lose too much sleep over that. If they have 6, a judge isn't going to lose too much sleep over that. Extra points or not enough points are a defect, not a disqualification when it comes to single combs. So don't lose too much sleep if your roosters have more than 5 points. This is called a pea comb. The reason it's called a pea comb is it looks like peas in a pod. Cute little comb. Strawberry comb, you don't see this very often. In fact, I don't know that I've ever seen a bird with a strawberry comb. A cushion comb, yes. Cute little comb on these birds. This is called a walnut comb. You see these combs on silkies, sultans, things like that. Buttercup comb is actually it's a cup, and there's points on each side, and then it's hollow in the middle. They're kind of neat looking. A V-shaped comb, you see these on La Fletch birds. I think you see them on Houdans, don't quote me on that, but I kind of think that's where you see them, and it's basically a V. It's a V shape, that's why it's called that. And then a rose comb. This is a rose comb that you would see on an actual rose comb bantam. When you see a rose comb on a Wyandotte, the spike does not extend out this way. The spike follows the back of the head like this. But rose comb is flat to the head for the most part, covered by small bumps with a spike. It has to have that spike, and we'll discuss that in just a minute. Underneath the comb, you have the wattles. They come in different sizes. Some are larger than others. Some you can't see at all. And then this is the earlobe right here, not the actual ear. This is simply the earlobe. The ear itself is underneath this little patch of feathers right here. Earlobes come in different colors depending on the breed of the bird. It's either going to be blue or white or red, depending on what kind of bird you have. All right, so now we're going to start talking about defects and disqualifications in combs. Some of these are actually my birds, which is good to point out because even in champion bloodlines, you can have chicks born with disqualification traits. So this particular chick is a Japanese chick. It does have a single comb, but you can see here and here and here. These are called side sprigs. It's bad to have one, and this bird has 3. So this is a major defect in this chick. This chick is only 5. This chick was only 5 weeks old. I was going through them to get ready to move them to a grow out pen. I like to look at them close at this age to see if there's anything obviously going on with them that would be a problem down the road. And that's when I found this issue. This is a major issue. A judge would disqualify this bird right off the bat. It has no chance of going anywhere in a showroom. So this bird has been culled. It has gone to feed another animal. That's what I do with my culls. So it's good to look at your birds closely. The question is, and there is a right answer to this question, whose responsibility is it to find defects and disqualifications? Is it the breeder or is it the judge? And the right answer is, it is the breeder's responsibility to find defects and disqualifications in their birds. If they happen to miss that, which I have done, then it becomes the judge's responsibility to find defects and disqualifications in birds. Do judges always catch it? No. Do breeders always catch it? No. There have been birds slip through with defects and disqualifications that neither the breeder, exhibitor, or judge was able to catch, but this one is very obvious, very obvious. I'm going to ask a question right now that I want you to think about during the course of this presentation, and I want you to give me your honest opinions at the end through the chat feature. As a youth, exhibiting birds in either a fair, a county fair, or let's say that you want to advance and you want to get into one of the bigger shows, and you have a bird that has a disqualification. Do you want the judge to find that disqualification? Or do you want the judge to just bypass it so that you don't feel bad and he doesn't feel bad giving you that disqualification? This is a valid question because on one of the American Poultry Association sites, the question has been brought up. Should a judge let a youth showing a bird, should he let that disqualification pass because he doesn't want to make the exhibitor, the junior exhibitor, feel bad? Or should he do what a judge is supposed to do and disqualify that bird? So I want your honest opinions in what you think and how you feel. And I should follow that up with, I have had a bird get disqualified in a show. And I was very happy that the judge disqualified my bird because I learned something very valuable. I learned that I need to watch and look closer at my birds before I enter them into a show. I was an adult at the time. I wasn't a junior exhibitor, but it was embarrassing. It was a little bit embarrassing for me as an exhibitor to have a bird disqualified, but I was happy that the judge did it so that I could learn something to help me down the road a little bit. All right. Push the wrong button. Here we go. All right, this is another one of my birds. This is a Wyandotte. So a Wyandotte has a rose comb, which she has. She has a very cute, again, she's around 6 weeks old. She has a very cute rose comb, but I want you to look at this little spot right here. There's supposed to be a spike there, and she does not have a spike. This is called an inverted spike, and that is very much a disqualification. Her head is beautiful. She has a nice wide skull. It's wide from side to side, and it's wide from front to back. The comb itself is wide, which I like to see in my Wyandottes. this tiny little thing right here is going to give her a disqualification down the road. This is what a Wyandotte comb should look like back in this end. This is the spike that was missing in that other one. This comb is not as pretty in my opinion because it's not as wide and it does have this hollow center right here, but she does have the spike. This is more of a slight defect, the narrowness of the comb, the little divot. This is not a DQ, it's just not as pretty as a comb as I would like, but she does have the spike, which the other one did not. I apologize for the blurriness of these pictures. I didn't realize they were as blurry as they were. This is a drawing of a single combed male bird, a rooster. It does have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points on it. So that's a defect. It has this little thing right here that is called a lop or a twist in the comb. That's a defect. It does have this little thing right here, which is not necessarily a sprig, but it's getting close to a sprig, but this is a defect. The blade goes a little bit farther back than we want it to go. That's a defect. These wattles are way too long, not a disqualification, but a defect. The head on this bird, even without looking at it from the front, I can tell that it's a narrow head. That's a defect. So basically the artist threw everything in here that he could, or she, to show all of the defects that could happen in a single comb. Here's some more. This is called a thumbprint. It's like somebody took their thumb and pushed down on that comb and put a dent in it. So that's called a thumbprint. That's a defect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Not bad there, but can you see how the points are all flopping over? That's a defect. Long wattles again, longer than we want them to be. That's a defect. This is a rose comb. It has the spike. It's nice and wide. It has the little bumps, but can you see how it's almost too bumpy and too big? Not a disqualification, but it is a defect. These wattles are way, way, way too long. A nice skull on this bird, but that comb and these wattles are enough of a, and this earlobe too, actually, are enough of a defect that this bird is not going to go anywhere in a show hall. Another rose comb from the front view that is lopped. Rose combs are supposed to sit squarely on the head, and they're supposed to be centered perfectly. No lopping of the comb. So this is called a lopped comb, and it's also called a coarse comb. Now we're going to get into some wing problems. This is a Orpington chick of mine from a number of years ago. It's only about 3 weeks old. And I could tell that it was carrying its wings a little odd. So I picked it up and noticed it has what's called a split wing. So right here, these are the primary feathers. These are the secondary feathers. Right in between here, there's supposed to be what's called an axillary feather. There's not even a feather follicle. That's the word I'm looking for. There's supposed to be a follicle here with a feather that comes out and fills in this gap. This bird does not have one, and it never will have one. It's a birth defect that's going to have, it's going to have some major problems down the road as far as showing it because it doesn't have this axillary feather. This is called a split wing, and it is a disqualification in chickens. This is what it would look like if it had grown up, if I'd allowed it to grow up. You can see that this wing actually looks split. Here's your primaries, here's your secondaries. There should be a really pretty little feather right here, that axillary feather. It will never grow because the follicle is missing. All right, on this chick, this is not one of mine. This is called a slipped wing. So it looks like it's split in 2 pieces, but it also carries that wing really, really low. It should be carrying it up tight. It should fit nicely right here. All of these feathers should be hidden and you should just be able to see the tips of them right here. I don't want an unstable internet connection. So this is called not just a split wing, but also a slipped wing. Again, with this one, this is a slipped wing. You should not be able to see the primaries like this on a bird who has correct wing carriage. All right, this is another bird of mine. This is a Sumatra pullet. Beautiful bird. And the sweetest bird in the world. She has a beautiful head. She has beautiful coloring. Her wing carriage was fantastic. Her feather quality was fantastic. But she carries her tail to the side. This is called wry tail, W-R-Y, wry tail. She always carried her tail off to the side. This is a disqualification. She was such a sweet bird that I ended up selling her as a pet to a gentleman, and he loves her to this day, but I could not show her or breed from her because of this disqualification of a wry tail. On birds that have a disqualification, you do not want to breed from them because they will pass that problem onto their chicks. Defects, they may or may not pass that trait onto their chicks, but disqualifications, almost 100% of the time, they will pass that on to their chicks. This is called split tail. So, and you usually see it in roosters. I don't think I've ever seen it in a hen. So the back looks good, everything looks good, until you get to the tail and it actually does, it splits into two sides. Sometimes the issue is in the where the tail grows out itself. There's actually two bases to the tail, so you kind of like are growing two tails, but usually it's just a deformity in the tail, the part of the body where the tail grows from. It's a deformity there that causes the tail to split as the bird is maturing. Very much a disqualification. All right, we talked a little bit last time about squirrel tail. And in most breeds, squirrel tail is a disqualification. So in a lot of the breed descriptions, they tell you what angle the tail is supposed to be carried at. This is 90 degrees. This is horizontal. And this bird's tail actually goes beyond 90 degrees. There's only one breed, to my knowledge, that's supposed to have a squirrel tail. Hang on just a second. And that's the Japanese. So you can tell this is vertical, the 90 degrees, and this bird's tail does go beyond that. This bird has to have that characteristic. It has to go beyond the vertical 90-degree mark. But this one, so this is a squirrel tail in a Polish. This is the way it's supposed to be, which is probably about a 50 to 60 degree angle, 55 degrees. This one is past vertical right here. So this is a disqualification in this breed, but not a disqualification in this breed. If this bird did not have that squirrel tail effect, it would be disqualified for not having it. That's why it's important to understand your breeds and what they are supposed to have. All right, now we're going to get it down into the feet. It's pretty obvious what's wrong with this bird's feet. Curled toes. There's two things that can cause curled toes, and one of that is genetic tendencies. So the parents have curled toes, and they pass that trait onto their chicks. The other thing that can cause curling of toes is problems while the chick is developing inside of the egg. It can cause the toes to curl. So the curling of toes is not a disqualification per se. It's more of a defect because it can be genetic, but it can be a birth defect caused by a problem in the incubation process. So a judge will usually allow one toe curled and not worry too much about it. But when you get into this kind of an issue, the judge is not, I don't know that they would disqualify it, but they would not let this bird advance too far in the judging process. It's actually painful for birds to have this kind of curling. If a bird has one toe on each foot that's curled or one toe on one foot that's curled, it's not going to be that big of a deal. This kind of an issue causes major problems with the bird as far as walking and pain while it is walking. All right, this is another disqualification deformity in a chicken, and it can happen to either roosters or hens. This happens to be a rooster. You can tell because of his spur. It's called duck foot. So chickens have 4 toes. Most of them do. The 3 come out the front, and then this one is supposed to come out the back, just like this. But on birds with it's called a duck foot, that hind toe curls forward. It makes the bird unsteady as they are walking because they don't have that stability of that hind toe. It looks really funny. It looks really weird, and it is a disqualification. All right, now we're going to get into some beak problems. Crossed beaks. It's not necessarily a disqualification, but it is a major defect. It can happen genetically, again, just like the curling of the toes, or it can happen as a problem in the incubation process. This bird has a slight crossed beak. It's called a scissor beak. Sometimes the beak will actually come down and kind of veer off to the side like this a little bit. This one is mild. It could probably be shown, but it would be a defect, not a disqualification, but it would not advance in the judging process. This one is severe. This is a severe scissor beak. So you can actually tell that the top beak comes down and curls off to the side, but the bottom beak has a severe, severe deformity. This bird obviously has lived to be an adult. It has learned how to eat with its beak like this. So as far as being a pet, it would be fine as long as it's not suffering because of this defect. They do learn how to eat with their beak like this. But it is not, this would be a disqualification. This bird would be disqualified in the show hall. All right, the only way to show this disqualification is on a bird that has been plucked. As this bird that will be used for meat has been plucked. This is the keel of the bird. And you can see that keel is crooked. It should come down absolutely straight, as straight as I can make it anyway. But this bird has a crooked keel. The only way that a breeder, exhibitor, or a judge would be able to tell this in the show hall is to hold that bird, which they have to do, and feel that keel, and which they do. They want to make sure that the bird has enough meat on its bones, that it's a good weight. And while they're doing that, they're feeling that keel to make sure that it's straight. If it is not straight, that is very much a disqualification. Whoa, sorry about this one. This is hard to see. I apologize for that. So this is a wing feather. All of them come down straight. Everything's good until you get to this one, and it has a lovely little twist to it. Even if it's one feather in the wing, it's going to be a disqualification. It's called a twisted feather. Does it affect the bird's ability to is it painful? No. Is it, a pet would be perfectly happy with a twisted wing feather and not cause an issue. But in the show hall, this is very much a disqualification. All right, let's talk about eyes for a minute. This bird is blind in this eye. Could be due to an injury, could be due to a disease like Merrick's disease will cause blindness. A defect, if the bird is blind in one eye, it's just a defect, and points will be taken off for the blindness in the one eye. If the bird is blind in both eyes, it's a disqualification. All right, so this is a cute little cochin pullet or a hen. So let's talk about her for a minute. She has a nice head, she has a nice comb, she has the right colored eyes. Her wings are nice and tight. No slipped wing, no split wing. She has a nice full breast. Come back here. This cushion should come all the way up here and then come down. And then this feathering right here should be full, full, full like this. She should have heavy feathering on her feet, which this one does not. She has some feathering, but the feathers that come off right here should come all the way out to here. And then this is the big ugly disqualification on cochins, and this is called vulture hawks. It's a bad thing in cochins. They should be soft feathered all the way around. These are very stiff feathers, and when we find them on cochins, it's a disqualification. This is a Brahma who has good size. He's really tall, which you want Brahmas to be, but he has these, this is severe vulture hawks on this bird, very stiff feathers right here. And he should have more fullness in his tail all the way down here. This is bad. In vulture hawks in any of the feather-footed varieties is bad. There are some breeds that you want vulture hawks in. I can't think of any of them right now. There's two bantam breeds. The Sultans, which is a large fowl breed, I think you want vulture hawks in them. And then there's a couple of bantam breeds that you do want vulture hawks, but not on your feather-legged birds. All right, this is a 5-week-old chick. It's a black Wyandotte. This is one of my birds. And I had to get this bird out in the sun before I could see that she has, this is called leakage, color leakage. It's called mealiness in the wings. This bird should be totally black. And she had this red leakage in her feathers. So that's not something that's going to go away as she matures. She's gonna turn out to be a reddish black color, which is not something that I want in my black Wyandottes. So she was culled early. I could have raised her up to be a pet for somebody, but I've got so many chicks right now that I have to kind of judge who I want to feed to adulthood. And so she was put to good use. I want to make that clear. I don't just throw them in the garbage can. She was put to good use, but this is very much something that is a disqualification. All right, this is something else that judges are going to look for while they're judging the birds, and that is the vigor of the bird. The bird on the left here is very narrow. This is the same breed of bird. They're both leghorns. But you can see the narrowness in the head, the narrowness in the neck, shoulders, back, in the pelvic region, clear down all the way to the tail. This bird is narrow, as opposed to the bird on the right, who has a nice wide head, a wide neck, nice shoulders, nice broad back, and is wide all the way down to the tail. So this is called a vigorous bird, and this bird lacks vigor. So why is that important for the judge to look at that and notice it? Because this bird is built to do what it was bred to do, lay eggs. This bird will lay eggs, but it won't be as vigorous as in doing so as this bird would. If it's a meat type bird, the judge is going to look even closer at the vigor of the bird and how it's built and put together. All right, so that kind of sums up the defects and disqualifications. Like I say, barely scratched the surface of defects and disqualifications, but kind of gives you an idea. So now I'm going to introduce you to what we're going to be discussing a little bit tonight and also into the next class. And that is the different classes of birds. These are classes that are recognized by the American Poultry Association. The American Bantam Association does not recognize obviously any of the large fowl birds, and they do differ a little bit in the Bantam classes, but for the most part, they're the same, but we're just going to focus on the American Poultry Association. So you have your American class. These are birds that were bred and produced and created in America. It's your Plymouth Rocks, your Wyandottes, Dominiques, Rhode Island Reds are a big one. Then you have your Asiatic class. These are Asian birds that all three of them have feathered legs, very large birds, and they have feathered legs and feet. The English class, these are birds that were created and bred in England and the surrounding areas. Orpingtons are probably the most familiar ones. Australorps, the Sussex, beautiful birds, the Sussex are. Mediterranean class, these are your egg layers, leghorns, Andalusians, very flighty. These birds are wilder than a lot of the other birds, and they are bred mostly for laying eggs. And the continental class, this is your it's kind of like they took everything else and lumped it into a group. The Polish are probably the most well-known in this class. Yeah, probably the Polish is the one that's most recognizable. Hamburgs being second. Some pretty birds in this class. And again, they're a little bit on the flighty side. In the Bantams, you have your game Bantams, and in that class is your modern games and your Old English games. Single comb, clean-legged. So in the show hall, they're just going to take the first letter. So they're going to be called SCCL, which stands for single comb, clean leg. They have a single comb, obviously, and no feathering on their legs. These are all the bant. So that's a pretty big class right there in the single comb, clean leg. Next is the rose comb, clean legged. They have a rose comb, obviously, no feathers on their legs. Wyandottes are in this class. Rose combed Rhode Island Reds. There's a bantam that's actually called a rose comb. All other combs clean-legged, so AOCCL. I don't know that there's any down there that you're going to really recognize. Sumatras might be one. Pretty little birds in this class. And then you have your feather-legged bantam class, and this is where your Cochins, your Silkies, your Langshans, they're the ones that are in the feather-legged class. The Sultans are actually one that they have to have the vulture hawks. So they are in the feather-legged class, and they do have to have the vulture hawks. So it's you have to keep track of your breed and what the description is for your birds. This is an example of same breed. One's a large fowl, one's a bantam. These are both my birds. So this is a large fowl white Wyandotte, good sized bird. And this is the bantam version of the Wyandotte, a black Wyandotte. It's just a good comparison of how I wish she was standing a little bit better, the white one, but they are supposed to look the same. One is just a scaled down version of the other one. All right. Because I raise Cochins, that's probably what we're going to be using for examples in future classes as far as getting them ready to show and how to judge them and things like that. So this is a large fowl Cochin pullet. So she's less than a year old. She's the large fowl Cochin, nice and round. You want everything about a Cochin to be round. The head's round. The breast is round, the wings are round. That tail is beautiful and round. All of this fluff here on the thighs is round, and you cannot see her feet because they're covered by fluff. This is a beautiful champion bird owned by a friend of mine who lives in Indiana. And then next, this is my bird. This is the Bantam Cochin. Nice round head, nice round cushion. She's standing a little bit tall in this picture, but you can see her nice round breast, nice round thigh feathering. Her wing carriage is low in this picture. It should be up high. It almost looks like she has a slipped wing here, but she doesn't. It should be, she's just tired and she was dropping that wing a little bit. But you can see how this one and this one. So this one is large, much larger. They're huge birds as opposed to this one that is very small. She actually took best in show at our show in March. She did really well. All right, I think that's it as far as my pictures go. So we kind of introduced you to what to watch for as far as things that you don't want in your birds. And like I say, these disqualifications and defects, they can happen to anybody. They can happen in the very best lines. It's just something that happens. But when it does happen, you don't want to use that bird to show, and you don't want to use that bird to breed from. So I wanted to educate you on what to watch for as far as that goes. All right, let's look at our chat here. All right, so I think for youth at the county fair, they should point out these blemishes, but not actually disqualify. Mom might not want to invest in a fancy bird the first year, but if the youth has a good experience showing the first time, they're likely to come back next time and make improvements, such as buying a better bird. Thank you, that's a very good point. And that was part of the discussion that these people were having, is people need to be educated on what defects and disqualifications are. But you can't expect somebody who's doing it for the first time to know everything. So educate them, point out the blemishes, and not necessarily disqualify, but let them know so that they know what to look for down the road. So good point. As a parent, I would much rather have the judge tell my child what is wrong so he can learn and make things right. I think that we have gotten away from the mentality. I think we have gotten away from the mentality that you get what you earn, and now everyone expects a blue ribbon. You don't learn what you need to learn if you always are given a ribbon. Thank you, and I kind of agree. We want to reward hard work. We want to reward knowledge that goes along with that hard work. It's kind of a fine line. I guess my theory is buy the best you can buy and improve on that. I do know people, and it's not right, I do know people who buy show birds from somebody and buy it and immediately put it into a show cage. They haven't done any of the work other than shelling out the money for the bird, and then they put it in a cage and win a ribbon with it. It's a fine line. These are beautiful comments. Thank you for giving them. I missed one up here. Shouldn't you not show a chicken in showmanship that has a disqualification? I do agree with telling the judge your bird's DQ. So that's a good question. Should you take a chicken and do showmanship with it that has an actual disqualification so that you can show the judge that you know what a disqualification is? In showmanship, the judge is judging the person doing the showing. They're not judging the chicken. They're judging they're judging the person who is talking about their bird and their knowledge. So if you took a bird with a disqualification and you presented it and said, this is my bird and this is what's right with it and this is what's wrong, and you actually point out the disqualification, then the judge would know that you know your birds and you know your breed and you know what a disqualification is, which I think would impress the judge. If you're taking a bird to show to put into a cage and have the bird judged, then, and you know it has a disqualification, then no, you shouldn't do that. But I think showing a bird with a DQ would be okay. All right, so Brandy left a message for everybody. All right, any other questions on anything? And you can unmute yourself if you want to ask the question, that would be fine too. Anybody? All right. I think people are just replying here.
Kathy?
Yes.
Don wants to know if Turkins are a good one to show.
So Turkins are not shown as Turkins, they're shown as naked necks. And they are a recognized breed, and depending on what the variety is, if it's an accepted variety. But I think it's only in the Bantam, I think. So if you wanted to show one in the backyard class, then yes, that would be fine. If he's showing it in the open class, it needs to be a Bantam. But yes, they're entered as naked necks, and there is actually a description for them in both the ABA and the APA, and they do have recognized varieties, meaning colors. So he could if it meets that guideline, I guess is what I'm. Does that answer your question, Jen? Sorry. It was a lot of rambling. Does that answer?
Yes, it did.
Okay. All right. Somebody last time asked where to find show quality birds. And that is a difficult question to answer. My advice is always go to a show and talk to the people who are showing the birds at the show. Talk to the breeders who are actually there exhibiting their birds, and if it's a breed that you're interested in, talk to that breeder. If you want to breed that and you cannot find anybody locally, then you can reach out to myself, other club members, and we'll try our hardest to put you in touch with somebody who has that breed, has that variety, with the understanding that they're not going to sell you their very best birds, but they will get you a good start. 99% of breeders want to get good birds into the hands of youth, and also know that they're not going to give them away. Also, most breeders, if they know they're going to 4-H youth, will give them a good deal. That they have a lot of time and money in these birds, and it's always best to start with the best that you can afford, and improve from there and work on your own lines. So if anybody has varieties that they're interested in and they cannot find anybody who breeds them, reach out to me and I'll see what I can do to help you find somebody. Locally would be best, so we can get them to you without having to ship to you. But if we can't find anybody locally, then we'll go beyond that and see who we can find. All right, good question down here. What do you think will happen with shows with the bird flu outbreak going around? Okay, I'm glad somebody brought that up because it is something to discuss. High path avian influenza is working its way across the country. Most recently, it was found in Wyoming, so it is working its way to Utah. How is it spread? It spread from the wild bird population. Ducks and geese are the major carriers of this type of influenza. They don't necessarily exhibit any symptoms from it. They don't necessarily die from it, but they can pass it along to our domestic birds. So there are shows being canceled all over the East Coast, and working their way farther towards us, shows are being canceled. The state vets are requiring for shows to be canceled. Has that happened to Utah yet? No, not yet. Will it happen down the road? I hope not, but it's a possibility. They are already limiting what can be brought into Utah, and they are limiting certain types of bird cells and things like that. Not drastically yet, but it is starting. So there are people who are like, well, that's just wrong. They can't keep us from buying birds. They can't keep us from having shows. It's not that the state vets are being mean. Their goal is to protect the birds in the state of Utah. That's what they want to do. So when they start placing restrictions on shipping and buying and selling and showing, that they're not being mean. They are just trying to protect the birds. So what can we do? We can practice good biosecurity with our own flocks. If you live under a major migratory flyway for ducks and geese, don't free range your birds. Keep a covering over your birds so wild birds can't get in. And I say that right now there's wild birds all over around by my birds. Is it possible to 100% protect your birds? It's not, but do the best that you can, because it is coming. It's going to do its thing, and then hopefully it's going to be done and go on its merry way and be done. In the meantime, protect your birds as much as you can, and we'll see what it does down the road as far as shows and county fairs and things like that. Hopefully everything is just business as usual, but we have to be real about this disease, because it is real, and it is working its way towards Utah. So thank you for that question. Anything else? Okay. Next time we meet, we're going to start talking about how judging takes place in an open show, how a judge picks a good bird out of the hundreds of birds that are in that building, how he picks the one that's the very best, he or she picks the bird that's the very best. And then I'm hoping to get a couple of interviews done with people who participate in junior showmanship, so you kind of have an idea and get a feel for what happens there. So that's what's going to happen in the next 2 and maybe 3 if we need to. 2 to 3 sessions, we'll start discussing that. Anything else? Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm glad we made it. I held a signal, yes, and your computer stayed on, so that's success.
Woohoo!
Yes, it looks like all of the rich kids that wanted credit have signed in. If you are from another county and you would like credit sent back to your county, then you just put your name and your county in the chat, and I will make sure that that gets sent to them. I don't have last week's recording up yet on YouTube. I'm working on that this week, and we'll work on getting this one up there also for those of you that would like to go back and review. Thank you again, Kathy. So we will see everyone in 2 weeks, and we'll try to remember to send out earlier reminders. They were late this afternoon, so I apologize for that. So, okay, see you guys in 2 weeks. Kathy, we appreciate you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.